From the time humans first lifted up their eyes to contemplate the stars and the immensity of space, we Earthlings have been fascinated with the question of whether or not we are alone in the universe. Some gregarious instinct seems to drive us to seek contact with others beyond the confines of this world. Is there intelligent life on other planets? Are there civilizations older than our own with superior technologies? Are there beings capable of interstellar and intergalactic travel? Surely this is the stuff of science fiction. Can we be sure that other planets beside the 9 in our own solar system even exist? And if they do exist, how can we know whether they're inhabited with intelligent life forms? And if there are such life forms, how could we communicate with them? Can we trust them? Might they already have visited us, leaving behind tangible evidence of their presence?
We now have evidence that there are other solar systems, but what are the chances that any of them are inhabited with intelligent life?
There can be no doubt that science is taking the possibility of intelligent life on other planets very seriously. And scientists are making a concerted effort to communicate with any intelligent aliens in outer space. But if they exist, will they be friendly or hostile? Will we be able to communicate with them? Are the distances too great to allow physical contact? Or have they perhaps already visited us? In 1902, a French widow offered 100,000 francs to the first person to make contact with alien life. However, she excluded Mars from the endeavour because it was thought that that would make the task too easy. The possibility of life on Mars, the most Earth-like planet in the solar system, has long been entertained. Thus, the August 1996 question headline asking, "Life on Mars?" wasn't so astonishing because it had frequently been asked by scientists and novelists alike. What caused the excitement was the extraordinary claim that science had discovered proof of life on Mars.
Scientists found a 2-kilogram rock down in the wastes of Antarctica. It originated, according to the most popular scenario, on Mars itself. It was thrown into solar orbit some 16 million years ago, it is thought, by the impact of an asteroid coming down onto the surface of the red planet in a very violent eruption. This small rock then orbited the Sun for all of that time until it was captured just 13,000 years ago by the Earth's gravitational field. And then it landed in the wastes of Antarctica. And there it lay dormant until just last year, 1996, when it landed on the front page of our newspapers with the spectacular claim that it contained evidence for life having existed on Mars.
They found what they believe were fossils of bacteria or early forms of plants. And if that were the case, and these are from Mars, indeed, that would indicate that at one time that there had been this very simple form of life that had developed on Mars. And this is the first time we've had any indication of that.
And of course, over the past few decades, scientists have collected vast spectroscopic evidence of many, and in some instances quite complex, organic molecules deep in space. But this stops very far short of an actual claim for life. And I think a principle which has often guided science can be usefully applied in this case. The more spectacular the claim, the more convincing the evidence has to be. And I think most scientists in this instance would regard the jury as very much still out.
Nevertheless, such scientific announcements as the discovery of data consistent with bacterial life on Mars spurs on other scientists in their efforts to find our cosmic neighbours.
The quest for beginnings, in a scientific sense, takes them to outer space looking there for the origins of life.
One such venture of the scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence is the $16 million project Phoenix. During 1995, Australian and US scientists employed the 64-metre CSIRO radio telescope at Parkes in New South Wales in an effort to pick up signals beamed from any intelligent life on some other planet elsewhere in our galaxy. What should they do if they succeed? Should they answer?
The prevailing opinion seems to be that we should remain quiet and mute, because any species out there are likely to be belligerent and may well want to feast off us.
Scientists committed to the evolutionary hypothesis believe that any dominant intelligent species on another planet would have got there like us, clawing, clambering over, killing and consuming any competitive species in a self-centered fight for survival. Sounds a bit off-putting, doesn't it? But are we really in danger in a universe of such awesome dimensions?
The universe is certainly vast. You can put it this way, if the distance, about 400,000 kilometres between the Earth and the Moon, were represented by a playing card, a typical thin playing card, then the distance from here to the nearest star would be a stack of playing cards about 43 kilometres high.
From where we are, perched on the edge of the Milky Way, 3 other galaxies are visible to the naked eye. Scientists can see millions more through their telescopes, and they believe that there are billions. The distances between the galaxies are of unbelievable proportions. The nearest galaxies to us are the small and large Magellanic Clouds, about 200,000 light years away. The next nearest is the Andromeda Nebula, which is 2 million light years away.
Now, light travels about 7.5 times around the Earth's equator each second. It takes approximately 8 minutes for light leaving the Sun to reach the Earth, a distance of about 150 million kilometres. So the distance light will travel in a full year is incomprehensibly large.
On the 13th of June 1983, the Pioneer 10 spacecraft exited from our solar system, the first human-made object to do so. However, the distances are so immense that space travel between solar systems is probably impossible. If this is so, then distance makes the universe safe for us and for them, presuming they exist, of course. Physics, rather than character, keeps us from hurting them and them from harming us.
It's not only science that's interested in outer space today, but so is science fiction. You'll remember in Star Wars, Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker find themselves trapped with their friends in the evil Empire's monster spaceship. In a hand-to-hand fight with Darth Vader, Ben Kenobi sacrifices his life, making it possible for Luke and the others to escape. The evil Empire chases them in hot pursuit. But Luke Skywalker destroys it and ends the drama.
Perhaps the most striking point of Star Wars' very close similarity to the conflict between good and evil is that it's been going on in the universe for thousands of years. We all see this conflict in our neighbourhoods and even in our own lives. And as in Star Wars, evil seems to be in control. Did God plan a world like this? Or is Star Wars right when it suggests that there is a sinister evil empire behind it all? The Bible's answer to these questions begins in outer space, a long time ago, and in a galaxy far away in a place called heaven. This is the Revelation's cryptic account.
And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail. nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer.
Notice how Michael leads the force of justice and right, and the dragon or Satan leads the forces of evil, and each is supported by other beings called angels.
There have been a number of scientific studies made involving deep space telescopes where various groups, including some groups of Christian scientists, have been looking for messages that might connote intelligent transmission from outer space. None's been found yet.
My own personal feeling is that given the vast number of stars that we have in our own galaxy and the tremendous number of other galaxies of similar size, that it's very unlikely that we would be the only intelligent life in the whole universe. So I think that there is a high probability that there is extraterrestrial intelligence out there.
The book of Revelation also suggests the idea of other inhabitants in the universe.
Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and ye who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time.
But just who is the leader of this evil empire that the Revelation calls the dragon or Satan?
You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones.
The Bible really doesn't say much about the origin of evil. It makes very clear that evil is a reality, a terrible reality. But it gives just a few clues, a few hints that the origin of evil was outside this planet, some way out there in outer space. Evil began. Everything was perfect once.
You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you.
But into a being, a created being, some person out there, evil came. That person chose the way of evil rather than the way of good. That's where it all began. It started there, and then it spread eventually to this earth.
Lucifer was created a perfect, blameless being. Lucifer originated wrong thinking within his own mind. God didn't put it there, he found it there.
Oh, it's so hard to define evil. We know it's real. When we think of the Nazis and their extermination of the Jews, for instance, we know that there's a demonic quality to evil. So ultimately, evil is something which is terrible, which is violent, which is filled with lies and deception, which destroys everything that's good and beautiful.
This raises one of the most important principles about God and how he deals with the age-long conflict between good and evil.
When evil arose, God did not simply rise up and stamp it out. Now, evil arose because God gave everyone in the universe that free choice. He wanted people to love him. Love cannot be compelled. They had to have that heart to choose freely. And one individual chose to go the bad way. And God did not immediately destroy. He let evil take its course.
So why did Lucifer rebel? What was the point of his disagreement with God? The Old Testament writer Isaiah says,
For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
It seems to me that evil always comes back to the individual and the ego, the self. In one way or another, that individual ego is exalted to a place way beyond the proper place.
When one person aspires to another's throne, we call it treason, rebellion against the existing government. The Bible says that Lucifer rebelled against God's government. He rebelled against God's laws and authority. He wanted God's position. He wanted to be like God. He wanted to be God. The idea that God has a government should not come as a surprise. Even science fiction assumes that beings in other parts of the universe have their rulers and subordinates and laws to be obeyed.
The universe is built on law. We accept that, we acknowledge that in terms of the laws of physics and astronomy and so on. But I believe that's also true in the moral world. I believe that God is, that he's real, that he is moral, and therefore he's established moral law. It's an idea that's not all that popular today.
When rebellions begin, the issues at first seem unclear and people are confused about who is right. However, as time goes on, the issues become clearer and people begin to take sides. Opinions harden until it almost becomes impossible to persuade anyone on either side that others might be right. This is probably how it happened on planet Heaven. War broke out when Satan and his angels maintained their defiant stand against God's government in spite of the fact that the issues were clear. Revelation plainly says that when rebellion had reached its full maturity, Satan was hurled to the earth and his angels with him.
So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
We're not told why this earth was made the new home for Satan and his angels. Maybe it was because our first parents listened to Satan and followed his suggestions, whereas none of the others did. But the end result is that this world has become his home. This has had tremendous consequences for us. Suddenly this star war between good and evil became a battle that you and I have to fight. This became apparent immediately after God created the world. God planted a tree in the middle of the garden and said to our first parents,
"And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die."
That story in Genesis has so many clues to what evil is about and the nature of free choice. Some people say, well, it's just a fairy tale, and they dismiss it. But in fact, if you look at that tale very carefully, you realize it has profound truths that really resonate with us today. It seems to me the ultimate heart of that story is about who will be God.
Adam and Eve were not banished from the Garden of Eden so much for eating the fruit as for distrusting God. This is clear from the statement of the serpent to Eve.
Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden?
Note the subtle doubt. The implication was, you've got to be kidding. God didn't really say that, did he? Did he really tell you not to eat from any tree in the garden? Now the serpent knew very well that God had said that they could eat of any tree in the garden except one. The serpent's question was cleverly worded, not only to cast doubt on God right from the start, but to practically force Eve to respond in order to correct his wrong statement. When Eve said that there was only one they couldn't eat, the serpent then told an out-and-out lie, "You will not surely die." And he followed it up with the very temptation that caused Lucifer to rebel in the first place, the desire to be like God. Then the serpent said to the woman,
You will not surely die. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
Unfortunately for each one of us, Eve fell for the deception.
So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate.
The result of their disobedience was immediate. They felt ashamed as they realized they were naked. Then later in the day, after hearing God's voice, the record says that Adam was afraid. There is no emotion more basic than fear. Adam and Eve didn't choose to be afraid. Fear happened to them. The only choice they made was to disobey God. Fear was the inevitable spiritual and psychological result of that choice. The moment Adam and Eve chose to sin, fear came into their lives. Unfortunately, the entire human race was doomed to the same fate. The Bible expresses it this way:
Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, thus death spread to all men, because all sinned.
Evil is such a terrible problem. There's no way we can solve it ourselves. In fact, for thousands of years, people have been trying to solve it, and there's no way out of it. Our century, which is so advanced in many ways, is the most wicked century of all, and the death camps and so on tell us that the solution has to come from outside ourselves.
If ever we're to change and escape from sin, our human nature must also be changed. This is where we must have help. And it's this very help that has already come from outer space.
Really, the whole story of the Bible is about God's solution. That even before evil began, God foresaw it and He made provision to meet it.
The most exciting news is that contact has already been made. Intelligent life has already communicated with us. It's full of goodness and love. It offers hope in the exact area of our deepest need. Close relationships have marked influences on us. It is like that with Jesus. As we develop our communication with Him, He's able to influence us to become like Him, so enabling our natures to reflect His positive attitudes. The Bible presents a simple process whereby we can develop this close relationship with Him.
For by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast.
God decided that He would take upon Himself our problem. It was too big for us to handle. God said, I will take it, and I will handle it for you, and I'll solve it for you.
For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
This verse doesn't say if a rich person believes in Him or a poor person believes in Him. It doesn't say if an educated person believes or an ignorant person. It simply says whoever, and that includes us all. Wherever you are, whatever problem you have your sinfulness and sins forgiven, your guilt and fear removed. By dying on the cross, Jesus has brought back into harmony all that Lucifer put into universal discord.
And by Him to reconcile all things to Himself, by Him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of His cross.
From time to time, people become concerned about the possibility of beings from outer space invading our world. The question is, why would they want to get involved in this world with all its problems? Why would any self-respecting alien risk such contamination? The Bible in fact states that it will be the other way around. That is, it is we who will be taken to another world. Jesus put it this way:
Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also.
When you look at the Bible, it's interesting to see how the first chapters really correspond to the last chapters. In the first chapter, you see the creation of the world. In the last chapter, you see the creation of a new world. You see in the second and the third chapters the coming in of evil. Then the last couple of chapters of the Bible in Revelation, you see the end of evil.
Space exploration will enter a new dimension on Jesus' return. He has promised to take us to visit the most wonderful place that human minds can imagine, infinitely better than our wildest dreams. Listen to how Revelation describes this home in outer space.
And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away.
So there's a real sense in which you go back to the beginning. But yet it's not really going back and starting all over again, because there's been a history in between. There's been a lot of pain, there's been a lot of stuff to work out. And so we go back, yes, we start over, but we start over with a lot of knowledge and with a lot of new appreciation of what God is about.
From heaven itself comes hope. In our search for life in outer space, perhaps the greatest discovery we can ever make about the universe is that the hands that were nailed to the cross 2,000 years ago will provide the means and power for us to reach our heavenly home. If you were to put your life to His care today, you'd be depositing it in a very safe pair of hands. And the life He promises beyond this world will be well worth having.